I was uninvited from my daughter's wedding. She sent me an email. If you want to see it, ask someone to send you pictures. I just wished her good luck. On the day of the ceremony, she called me 35 times. I was the one who was going to pay for it. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. I was sipping my morning coffee when the notification popped up on my phone. Hazel had sent me an email at 6:47 a.m. My heart did that little flutter it always did when I heard from my daughter. At 66, I still got excited about her messages, even though they usually meant she needed something. The subject line read, "Wedding update, please read." I set down my mug and opened it, expecting maybe a last-minute change to the seating arrangements or a request to pick up something for the reception. What I found instead felt like a physical blow to my chest. "Mom, after discussing with Kyle and his family, we've decided it would be best if you didn't attend the wedding ceremony. The guest list has gotten complicated with Kyle's family's social obligations, and we need to prioritize certain relationships for his career. If you want to see photos afterward, I can have someone send them to you. Thanks for understanding. Hazel." I read it 3 times before the words actually sank in. My own daughter was uninviting me from her wedding. The wedding I had been planning with her for 8 months. The wedding I was paying for. My hands started shaking. Not the tremor that sometimes came with age, but the kind of shaking that happens when your world tilts sideways. I had raised Hazel alone since she was 2 years old. Her father disappeared the moment things got real, leaving me to work double shifts as a nurse while putting myself through night school to become a nurse practitioner. Every sacrifice I made was for her. I called her immediately. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. The worst part wasn't even the uninvitation. It was the casual cruelty of it. Thanks for understanding. As if this was a minor inconvenience like asking me to pick up dry cleaning. As if the woman who had worked herself to exhaustion to give her every opportunity didn't deserve a conversation, just a cold email at dawn. I walked to my kitchen window and stared out at the garden I'd been tending for 20 years. The roses were blooming beautifully this May. I had planned to cut some for Hazel's bridal bouquet, thinking it would be a sweet touch to include flowers grown with love in her childhood home. My phone buzzed. A text from Hazel. "Please don't make this harder than it has to be." Harder than it has to be. As if I was the one making things difficult. As if I was the problem that needed to be managed. That's when it hit me. This wasn't Kyle's family's idea. This was Hazel's. She was embarrassed by me. Her mother, who had scraped together $30,000 for this wedding, who had spent weekends driving to vendors and tasting cakes, who had listened to her stress about every detail for months. I wasn't good enough for her new life. I thought about calling my sister Ruth, but I knew what she would say. "That girl has always been selfish, Addison. You just refused to see it." Ruth had never warmed to Hazel, said she was spoiled. I had always defended my daughter, made excuses for her behavior. But sitting there in my quiet kitchen, with that email still glowing on my phone screen, I finally saw what Ruth had been trying to tell me for years. This wasn't the first time Hazel had pushed me aside when it was convenient. It was just the first time it hurt this much. The wedding was in 6 days. 6 days that I had planned to spend in a flutter of final preparations and maternal joy. Instead, I would spend them figuring out how to respond to the daughter who had just broken my heart with the efficiency of a business transaction. I spent the next day replaying every conversation Hazel and I had about the wedding, looking for signs I had missed. They were everywhere. 3 months ago, when we were addressing invitations, she had casually mentioned that Kyle's mother, Patricia, had such refined taste and really understood social dynamics. When I suggested we include some of my longtime friends from the hospital, Hazel wrinkled her nose. "Do you think they'd feel comfortable at a country club reception, Mom? I mean, it might be awkward for them." I had brushed it off. Hazel was just nervous about mixing different social circles. Now I realized she was already distancing herself from my world. Then there was the dress shopping incident. Hazel had insisted I try on something more elegant than the navy dress I loved. She had steered me toward a beige mother-of-the-bride outfit that made me look washed out and older. "Patricia is wearing sage green," she had said. "We don't want you two to clash." At the time I thought she was being considerate. Now I understood she was trying to make me invisible. The final red flag had been 2 weeks ago when I overheard her on the phone with Patricia. "Oh, she's handling most of the financial details," Hazel had said. "You know how she is about wanting to be involved in everything." She had laughed, that dismissive little laugh she used when she was embarrassed by something. I wasn't wanting to be involved. I was paying for everything. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the photographer, even Hazel's dress. When she had shown me the estimated costs 8 months ago, I had swallowed hard at the $30,000 price tag but agreed because I wanted her to have the wedding of her dreams. Kyle came from money. Real money. His father was a partner at a prestigious law firm, and his mother was involved in all the right charities. They lived in a sprawling colonial in the wealthiest part of town and vacationed in Martha's Vineyard every summer. Next to them, my modest 3-bedroom house and my practical Honda Civic probably looked embarrassingly middle class. But I had worked for everything I had. After Hazel's father left, I had gone back to school while working full-time and raising a toddler. I had built a good career as a nurse practitioner, bought my own home, and saved enough to give my daughter opportunities one never had. I wasn't wealthy, but I was proud of what I had accomplished. Apparently, pride wasn't enough for Hazel anymore. I remembered the first time she brought Kyle home 2 years ago. He was polite but distant, asking careful questions about my work like he was interviewing me for a position I probably wouldn't get. When they left that night, I had felt oddly deflated, like I had failed some test I didn't know I was taking. Hazel had changed after she started dating Kyle. She began criticizing things that had never bothered her before. My furniture was outdated. My favorite restaurant was kind of tacky. Even my longtime friend Janet, who had been like an aunt to Hazel growing up, was suddenly a little much when I suggested inviting her to dinner. I had tried to adapt, thinking Hazel was just growing up and developing more sophisticated tastes. I had even taken out a small loan to update my living room furniture when she complained about how embarrassing it would be to have Kyle's parents over for dinner. But it was never enough. There was always something else that needed to change, some other way I fell short of the standards of Kyle's family. And now the ultimate rejection. I wasn't even worthy of attending her wedding. My phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Chun, calling to ask if I needed help with any last-minute wedding preparations. Actually, I heard myself saying, "There's been a change of plans. I won't be attending after all." The silence on the other end was deafening. Mrs. Chun had watched Hazel grow up, had babysit her countless times when I worked late shifts. "Oh, honey," she finally said, and the sympathy in her voice almost broke me. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how I had raised a daughter who could discard me so easily. Where had I gone wrong? When had my love become a burden instead of a gift? But as the hours passed, my hurt began transforming into something else. Something harder and more resolute. If Hazel wanted to pretend I didn't exist, perhaps it was time to show her what my absence really meant. The next morning I did something I had never done before. I logged into my online banking and reviewed every payment I had made for Hazel's wedding. The numbers stared back at me in black and white. Deposits for the venue, payments to the caterer, the florist, the photographer. My savings account had been drained systematically over the past 8 months. But it was the recent transactions that made my blood run cold. 3 days ago, Hazel had used the credit card I had given her for wedding emergencies to make a $5,000 payment to something called Prestige Event Planning. I had never heard of this company. I called the number on my credit card statement. "Prestige Event Planning, this is Miranda speaking. Hello. I'm calling about a recent charge on my card. Could you tell me what services this payment covered?" "Of course. Let me pull that up. Oh yes. This was for the upgraded bridal suite package and additional coordination services for the Whitmorchan wedding." Whitmorchan. Kyle's last name was Whitmore. But Chun? I'm sorry, did you say Chun? Yes, the mother of the bride, Patricia Chun Whitmore, requested the premium package. She wanted everything perfect for her daughter's special day. My heart stopped. Patricia was listed as the mother of the bride. Not me. Patricia. There must be some mistake, I managed to say. I'm the mother of the bride. Addison Hayes. There was a long pause. I'm looking at our files, and we have Patricia Chun Whitmore listed as the primary contact and mother of the bride. There's no mention of an Addison Hayes. I hung up before I said something I would regret. My hands were shaking as I called the wedding venue. Rosewood Country Club, this is Jennifer. Hi, this is Addison Hayes. I'm calling about the Hayes Whitmore wedding this Saturday. Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have any Hayes Whitmore events this weekend. We do have a Whitmore-chan celebration on Saturday. That's my daughter's wedding. Hazel Hayes is marrying Kyle Whitmore. Another pause. I'm looking at our contract, and the bride is listed as Hazel Chan Whitmore. The mother of the bride contact is Patricia Chan Whitmore. The world tilted. Not only had Hazel uninvited me from her wedding, she had erased me from it entirely. She was using Kyle's mother's maiden name, Chan, and pretending Patricia was her mother. All while using my money to pay for it. I called the florist next. Same story. The photographer. Same thing. Every vendor had Patricia listed as the mother of the bride and primary contact. My name appeared nowhere except on the payment authorizations. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. This wasn't just about social embarrassment or keeping up appearances. Hazel had systematically removed me from every aspect of her wedding, while continuing to drain my bank account. She wanted my money but not my presence. She wanted my sacrifice but not my love. I sat in my kitchen for a long time staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to call Hazel and demand an explanation. Part of me wanted to drive to her apartment and confront her face to face. But another part of me, a part that was growing stronger by the minute, wanted to see exactly how far she was willing to take this deception. I opened my laptop and began researching. It took me 3 hours, but I found what I was looking for. Every vendor, every service provider, every detail of Hazel's wedding was being paid for with credit cards and accounts that traced back to me. Despite presenting Patricia as the mother of the bride, despite using her name on all the contracts, the money was still coming from my accounts. Patricia wasn't paying for anything. She was just taking the credit. By evening, I had made my decision. I drafted a simple email to Hazel. Good luck with your wedding. I hope it's everything you've planned for. I hit send before I could change my mind. Then I did something that felt both terrifying and liberating. I called my credit card company and reported my card stolen. I told them to cancel all authorizations and freeze any pending charges. I did the same with my bank, placing holds on all automatic transfers and scheduled payments. The wedding was in 3 days. Every vendor would need final payments before or on the day of the event. Hazel had no idea that the money she had been counting on was about to disappear. As I prepared for bed that night, my phone buzzed with a text from Hazel. Thanks for understanding, Mom. I knew you'd be reasonable about this. Reasonable. That word echoed in my mind as I turned off the lights. She thought I was being reasonable. She had no idea what was coming. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, which felt appropriate. I woke up early and made myself a proper breakfast, something I hadn't done in weeks. I was spreading jam on my toast when my phone started ringing. It was 7:23 a.m. The caller ID showed Hazel's name. I let it go to voicemail. The phone rang again immediately. And again. By the fourth call, I was curious enough to listen to the first message. Mom, there's some kind of mistake with the caterer. They're saying there's a problem with payment. Can you call me back right away? The calls kept coming. Between 7:23 and 8:15 a.m., Hazel called me 17 times. I listened to a few more messages, watching the panic creep into her voice with each one. Mom, this is urgent. Multiple vendors are saying there are payment issues. I need you to call them and sort this out. Where are you? Why aren't you answering? The florist is threatening not to deliver the arrangements. This is a disaster. Everyone is demanding payment before they'll provide services. You need to fix this now. By 8:30 the calls stopped. I assumed she had figured out what I had done. But at 9:15 my phone exploded with activity again. This time the messages were different. I know what you did. How could you sabotage my wedding? This is beyond cruel. You're destroying the most important day of my life because your feelings are hurt. This is unforgivable. Kyle's family is here and everything is falling apart. I hope you're proud of yourself. I turned off my phone and went to tend my garden. The roses were particularly beautiful today. Their petals soft and fragrant in the morning mist. I had planned to cut some for Hazel's bouquet. Instead, I cut a small arrangement for my kitchen table. Around noon I turned my phone back on. 35 missed calls from Hazel. I had never seen my call log look like that. The messages painted a picture of complete chaos. The caterer had refused to deliver food without payment. The florist had taken back the arrangements. The photographer had packed up and left. Even the string quartet had walked out when their check bounced. But the message that told me everything I needed to know came at 11:47 a.m. Patricia is furious. She's saying this proves our family is unreliable, and Kyle shouldn't marry into this kind of instability. She's questioning whether the wedding should happen at all. You've ruined everything. So there it was. Patricia wasn't paying for anything after all. When my money disappeared, there was no backup plan. The woman who had been presented to all the vendors as the mother of the bride, who had been taking credit for the elegant details and expensive choices, hadn't contributed a single dollar. At 2:30 p.m. my phone rang one final time. This call I answered. "What do you want from me?" Hazel's voice was raw, defeated. "I don't want anything from you, Hazel. I never did." "Then why did you do this? Why did you destroy my wedding?" I was quiet for a long moment, looking out at my garden where everything was peaceful and honest. "I didn't destroy your wedding. I just stopped paying for it. You know I don't have that kind of money." "Yes, I know. But Kyle's family does, don't they? The family that was so important you couldn't have your own mother at your wedding." Silence. "Where's Patricia now?" I asked gently. "Is she writing checks to save the day? Is she stepping up the way a real mother of the bride would?" She says this is our responsibility, that she's not going to bail us out. But she was happy to take credit when she thought I was paying for everything." I heard Hazel start to cry. For a moment my heart softened. This was still my daughter, the little girl I had raised and loved. But then I remembered the email, the systematic erasure of my name from her wedding, the casual cruelty of her dismissal. "I can fix this," I said quietly. "I can call the vendors, restore the payments, make everything happen. Your wedding can still take place today." "Really?" Hope flooded her voice. "Yes. But first I need you to tell Kyle's family the truth. I need you to tell them that I'm your mother, that I raised you alone, and that I'm the one who paid for this wedding. I need you to acknowledge me." The silence stretched so long I thought she had hung up. "I can't do that," she finally whispered. "Then I guess you've made your choice." I hung up and turned off my phone for the rest of the day. I didn't hear from Hazel for 3 weeks. During those weeks, I learned pieces of what had happened that Saturday through my neighbor Mrs. Chan, whose cousin worked at the country club. The wedding had been a complete disaster. Guests had arrived to find the venue decorated but no food, no flowers, no music. Kyle's family had been mortified. Patricia had spent the afternoon making frantic phone calls, trying to salvage something from the wreckage, but it was too late. The engagement had been called off by Monday morning. I felt no satisfaction in hearing this. There's no joy in watching your child's life fall apart, even when they've brought it on themselves. But I also felt no guilt. Hazel had made her choices, and consequences had followed. I was reorganizing my closet on a Thursday afternoon when I heard a car door slam in my driveway. Through my bedroom window, I saw Hazel walking toward my front door. She looked thinner, older somehow. Her hair wasn't styled with its usual perfection, and she was wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of the designer clothes she'd favored since dating Kyle. I met her at the door but didn't invite her in immediately. "Hi, Mom." Her voice was small, uncertain. "Hello, Hazel." We stood there for a moment studying each other. I could see she'd been crying recently. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her skin had that pale, exhausted look that comes from too little sleep and too much stress. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside and let her pass. She sat on my couch, the same couch she'd once called embarrassing, and folded her hands in her lap like a child waiting to be scolded. "I lost my job," she said without preamble. "Patricia called my boss and told him I was unreliable, that my family had a history of financial irresponsibility." She laughed bitterly. "Apparently, when you work at a wealth management firm, having a mother who sabotages weddings reflects poorly on your character." I sat down across from her, maintaining distance. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you? Really?" I considered her question seriously. "Yes. I never wanted you to suffer. I just wanted you to see what you were doing." Hazel's composure cracked. "I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt you. But did you have to destroy everything? Did you have to ruin my entire life? I didn't ruin your life, Hazel. I stopped enabling your choices. It's the same thing. No, it's not. I kept my voice steady. You made a decision to erase me from your wedding, while using my money to pay for it. You chose Kyle's family's approval over your own mother's feelings. You chose to lie to everyone about who raised you, who sacrificed for you, who loved you. Those were your choices. She was crying now, her shoulders shaking. I was scared, okay? Kyle's family has so much money, so much influence. I thought if I could just fit in, if I could be the person they wanted me to be, everything would be perfect. And where did that get you? Nowhere. Kyle won't even return my calls. Patricia acts like I don't exist. His father told people at the club that I was a fraud, and they had a lucky escape. She wiped her nose with her sleeve. I have no job, no fiancé, no money, and no friends. Everyone I thought cared about me disappeared the moment things got difficult. I watched my daughter fall apart and felt the familiar pull to comfort her, to fix things, to make her problems go away. But I also remembered the email, the systematic betrayal, the 35 unanswered calls while she expected me to clean up her mess. What do you want from me, Hazel? I want my mom back. Her voice broke. I want to come home. This will always be your home, I said carefully. But things can't go back to the way they were. She looked up at me, hope and fear warring in her eyes. What do you mean? I mean that if we're going to rebuild our relationship, it has to be based on honesty and respect. No more taking my love for granted. No more treating me like an embarrassment when it's convenient. No more assuming I'll always be there to fix your mistakes without acknowledgement or appreciation. I understand. I don't think you do yet. But maybe you will. I made us both tea, and we sat in my kitchen as the afternoon light faded. We really talked for the first time in years. Hazel told me about the pressure she'd felt from Kyle's family, how they'd made subtle comments about her background, how they'd slowly convinced her that her own life wasn't good enough. I listened, but I didn't excuse her behavior. Understanding why someone hurts you doesn't mean the hurt disappears. 6 months later, Hazel and I were having dinner together every Sunday. It had become our tradition, one we'd built slowly and carefully, like constructing something fragile that needed a strong foundation. She was working at a small nonprofit now, making a fraction of what she'd earned at the wealth management firm. But she seemed happier. More like the daughter I remembered from before Kyle and his family had convinced her that her life needed to be different. I saw Mrs. Chun at the grocery store yesterday, Hazel said, passing me the salad. She asked about you. She said she was proud of how I've been helping you with your garden. I smiled. Hazel had started coming over on Saturdays to help with yard work. At first I think she did it out of guilt, but lately she seemed to genuinely enjoy it. Working with our hands, talking while we weeded and planted, had given us a way to be together without the weight of our past mistakes hanging over every conversation. She also mentioned that Patricia's been asking around about me. Hazel continued, her voice careful. Apparently, she heard I'm doing well and wanted to reconnect. I set down my fork. And I told Mrs. Chun to tell her I'm not interested. I told her I already have a mother. Something warm settled in my chest. It had taken Hazel months to understand that choosing me didn't mean rejecting everyone else, but it did mean putting our relationship first. She'd had to learn that love wasn't about impressing people or meeting their standards, but about showing up consistently and honestly. I'm proud of you, I said. For telling off Patricia? For knowing your own worth. We finished dinner and moved to the living room. Hazel curled up on one end of my couch, the same couch she'd once been embarrassed by, and pulled out her laptop to show me photos from her week. This had become part of our Sunday routine too. She would share the small details of her life, and I would listen without trying to fix everything. I've been thinking about something, she said, closing the laptop. I want to pay you back for the wedding money. I shook my head. That's not necessary. It is to me. I know it will take me years on my current salary, but I want to do it. I need to do it. I studied her face. She wasn't saying this out of guilt or obligation. She was saying it because she finally understood what I had always tried to teach her. That love without respect is just manipulation, and respect requires acknowledging the sacrifices others make for you. Okay, I said. But we do it properly. A written agreement, reasonable payments you can afford. No interest. Really? Really? But Hazel, this isn't about the money. You know that, right? I know. It's about showing you that I value what you did for me. It's about proving that I'm not the same person who sent that email. She wasn't. The daughter sitting in my living room was different from the one who had uninvited me from her wedding. She was humbler, more thoughtful, more aware of how her actions affected others. The crisis had stripped away the artificial version of herself she'd been trying to become and revealed the person I had raised underneath. But I was different too. I no longer felt the desperate need to prove my love through endless giving. I had learned to set boundaries, to say no when necessary, to demand the respect I deserved. Our relationship was more honest now, even if it was sometimes more difficult. There's something else, Hazel said, pulling me from my thoughts. I've been seeing someone. My chest tightened automatically, and she must have seen it on my face. His name is David. He's a teacher at the elementary school where I volunteer on weekends. He's not wealthy or connected or impressive in any of the ways Kyle was, but he's kind. And he already knows all about you. What do you mean? I mean, I've told him everything. About how you raised me alone, about your work, about this house, about what I put you through. He wants to meet you if you're okay with that. I felt tears prick my eyes. I'd like that. Good. Because I invited him to dinner next Sunday. I hope that's all right. I laughed, wiping my eyes. A week's notice for dinner? How very considerate of you. She grinned, and for a moment, she looked exactly like the little girl who used to help me in the kitchen, standing on a chair to reach the counter. I'm learning. That night, after Hazel left, I sat in my garden with a cup of tea. The roses were blooming again, their scent sweet in the evening air. I thought about the path that had brought us here. From that devastating email to this tentative new beginning. I hadn't gotten an apology that erased the hurt. I hadn't gotten my old daughter back unchanged. What I had gotten was something more valuable. A relationship built on truth instead of convenience, respect instead of obligation. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when I saw flashes of the old Hazel, still times when she defaulted to expecting me to solve her problems. But now we could talk about those moments. Now she caught herself and apologized. Now she understood that love was a choice you made every day, not a debt someone owed you for existing. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Hazel. I forgot to tell you something, she said. David asked what I wanted most in the world, and I told him I wanted to make my mother proud of me again. Oh, sweetheart, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I never stopped being proud of you. I just needed you to start being proud of yourself. I'm working on it. I know you are. And I'm proud of that too. After we hung up, I stayed in the garden until the stars came out. For the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was real.